Before we start the podcast, I wanted to just pop in here and invite you to the upcoming masterclass that I'll be teaching live in September called Sales Scripts to Increase Influence. If you love the language suggestions and the way that I am phrasing things for your sales conversations in the podcast, then this masterclass is for you because it's all about language. It's all about creating scripts that are going to make a dramatic impact in your business for years to come. Now, you can find more details about the masterclass, the dates, the specific dates and times. I will share with you that these masterclasses are recorded. So if you can't make one of the live masterclasses, you get 60 days of access to the recordings so you can make up the class. One of the other huge benefits of the masterclasses when I teach them is I mail you a printed workbook that has all the techniques, all the sales scripts that I give during the live classes so that you have that workbook to refer back to. Many of my clients keep these workbooks like on their desk when they're writing their emails, when they are prepping for their sales calls, and they say they are invaluable. So most of the people say the workbook itself is worth the price of admission. So we would love to have you come be a part of it. You can find more details by going to bit.ly, so that's bit.ly/MC for masterclass sales scripts. So bit.ly/MC sales scripts. You'll find all the dates, the times, all the good stuff that's going to happen in the sales scripts to increase influence. When you click the sign me up button, I have a coupon code for you as a listener that's going to take $100 off your registration fee when you sign up right now. So if you scroll down to the bottom of the sales page, you'll see a spot that says have a coupon code. Here's your coupon code. You might want to pause this really quick and grab a pen and write it down, but it's SAVE100MC. Save 100 MC. That's going to take $100 off your registration fee. Hit the apply code, and you'll see at the bottom that there's a discount applied. That $100 discount is applied. Now, don't wait to sign up. I know it's not coming until September, but this masterclass sold out last year. We are already expecting it to sell out. We already have quite a few people registered for the masterclass. I would love to have you in there and support you as you continue to hone your own sales language and get more and more confident so that you can close more sales. So come join us, and I look forward to seeing you in there. Now let's start the podcast.
Are you ready to boost your confidence when selling so you're able to close more deals? Nikki Rausch will show you how to build a foundation of skills and a mindset that creates sales success without feeling pushy or salesy and without fear of rejection. She is a sales strategist and coach with more than 25 years of sales experience and is master certified in neuro-linguistic programming. This is a radically different approach to selling. It's a no sleaze, no slime, and no stress approach to building your business. This is Sales Maven. Here's Nikki.
Welcome, and thank you for listening to the Sales Maven Show. I'm your host, Nikki Rausch. I'm your own personal sales maven here to offer you tips, techniques, and strategies to master your sales conversation. Today's episode is the second in a series called Mastering Excellence. This concept comes from my background in neuro-linguistic programming, where we learn that there is a structure to excellence. And once you understand the structure, you can then apply it to your own life or business and get similar results to somebody who is exceptional at whatever that topic is. So today's guest, I'm super excited, is Carol Cox of Speaking Your Brand. Now, let me tell you a little about Carol in case you don't know her, although I feel like everybody does, but maybe you haven't met Carol yet. Carol is the founder of Speaking Your Brand, a coaching and training company that helps high-performing, purpose-driven women, entrepreneurs, and professionals create their signature talks and thought leadership platforms. Carol is also the host of the weekly 5-star rated Speaking Your Brand podcast, and during election season serves as a Democratic political analyst on the TV news. Carol was named one of Orlando's Women of the Year in 2021 and has also been featured in Forbes. Through her company and content, her mission is to empower more women to find and use their voice, to tell the stories that need to be told, and to activate ideas for change. I know, she's amazing, right? Carol, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much, Nikki, for having me. And you are amazing yourself. I know we've known each other for a few years now, and your podcast is one of the handful of ones where as soon as a new episode comes out, I click play and I listen to it that morning while I'm making my breakfast.
I am so honored by that. I have to say, I remember how we first, at least how I thought we first connected is I'd heard you a couple times on different podcasts and was following you and was really intrigued by you. And it felt like out of the blue one day, I got an email from you saying, I love your newsletter and I'd like to interview you on my podcast. And I remember going like, oh, how would she ever know who I am? And she wants to interview me on her podcast. I was like totally blown away. I will say it was a highlight moment in my business to know that Carol Cox read my newsletter. Like, oh my gosh, I still feel this way about you today, like in such awe of you.
Oh, well, that is so nice to hear. And you write great newsletters. And I looked this up before we came on. You were on episode 34 of the Speaking Your Brand podcast. So very early on. Now, it's 4.5 years later. And you were on episode 133. So you've been on twice.
I have been on twice. I know. And when I got to come back, I felt even like, oh my gosh, she even wants me to come back again for a second time. Now, over the years, we've gotten to work together. You were a client for a while, which was super fun. I have learned so much from you. I've hired you now multiple times to come in and do trainings for the Sales Maven Society because I just think, you are somebody who really walks your talk, which I am such a huge, that's really important to me. You're somebody who I trust. I know that you speak from a place of credibility when you do speak. And I just am like, again, such in awe and so grateful to have you in my life and to know that you're somebody that I consider a mentor and also somebody who I know I can just reach out to, who is so receptive to ideas and going back and forth and sharing things. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay, so today we're going to talk about, this is maybe not a traditional topic. Maybe it is, we'll see for you, but I told Carol before we started this episode, there's many things that I could interview her on the Mastering Excellence series about, but this is one that it was like my first choice of things. So she said yes to this, which I'm really excited to share with you today because it's one that I will say is a struggle for me. It's something that I don't feel really comfortable doing. And so I'm super excited to kind of dig in to your structure of this. So here's the topic that we're going to focus on specifically is how to bring your worldview into your business without polarizing your audience. I think you have a really unique ability to do this. I've watched you, especially for many years, I've been in awe of how you've done this, but I would say probably 2019 and also all through 2020, you were so out there of speaking about injustice and speaking about how women's voices weren't being heard and the Black Lives Matter movement. Obviously, there's a political, you're a political analyst on TV. So there's that piece to you of being able to speak up about politics, which are things that I will say I have really strong beliefs about, but not something that I ever feel comfortable bringing into my business. So thank you for saying yes to talking about this.
I am happy to, Nikki. And you are far from alone in this. I hear this from a lot of women, a lot of clients that they're not sure exactly how to toe that line or, what they want to talk about, what they feel comfortable talking about, what their audience would even be receptive to or want to hear. And I'll just say right out the start, there is no right or wrong answer. There is no right or wrong way to do this. I always tell people, do what feels comfortable to you. And here's a big and maybe just step a little bit past that line just to do a little bit of experimentation to see not only how do you feel doing it, but how does your audience react to it? Because you may be pleasantly surprised that they've been waiting to hear these things from you. And when they finally do, they get a sense of validation for themselves as well. And I've heard this from my own podcast listeners as I have stepped for a little bit further past that line of what I feel comfortable sharing. I've heard directly from them, Carol, we've been waiting for you to talk about these things. Thank you for doing so. Thank you for giving us a voice through your podcast.
Love that. Okay, so I'm going to kind of dig into the NLP questions themselves. Like, I feel like I could just have a conversation with you about it, but I really do want to try to get to some structure here. So, if I was to stand in for you for a day, so I get to be you, what would I do? How would I have to think or behave like you in order to really bring in my worldviews into my business?
Oh, this is a really deep question, Nikki.
It is a deep question.
So I'm just going to, I didn't have these questions in advance. So I'm just going to talk based on like what literally is coming to my mind. So
she purposely doesn't get the questions in advance because I really want what comes out of her mouth to be unplanned. So please.
It will be unplanned and it will be messy.
Okay. Yeah, that's okay. Fine.
So I like to say that I live 99% of my life in my head. So I guess I would be considered an introvert, but I kind of an ambivert. Like I love Zoom calls with people. Like I love, going to conferences and speaking, but I also need my alone time. So when I say I spend 99% of my life in my head, I do a lot of reading. I do a lot of thinking, and I actually don't do a lot of expressing the ideas that are in my head. And that's really why I love having the weekly podcast, because it forces me to get my thoughts out of my head to someone else. And so as far as like a day in my life living in my head, so it's a lot of reading. It's a lot of thinking of ideas, like intersections of ideas. What's going on in the world? How does this impacting, not even so much me, but how does this impact other people in the world or, in our country who would be most affected by it? And then I think about, well, I guess this is where empathy comes in. If I were in their shoes, what would I be hoping that other people would be thinking about or doing for me or helping or advocating for me? And so those are the things that come in my mind. And then I think, well, if this is something that I care about, and I know that there's other people out there like me, because I've met them, I've talked to them, then let me talk about it on the podcast or on the other social media content and email content that I create. And so I don't know if it's that there's not much of a filter. I don't have a political filter because I've been doing politics for over 15 years. It seems like it's just second nature for me to talk about what goes on in our country and in our world. But I don't talk about it every week. Like you're not going to listen to Speaking Your Brand podcast every week and hear about it. It's more like, every, a few months or so, something comes up and I'll talk about it. But it very much is infused to the values and the mission that we have at Speaking Your Brand.
Okay. So I want to just check in with you about one thing. I mean, a lot of what you just said was awesome. And there was one thing in particular that to me felt like a structure step. So we'll see what you think about this. You look, what's going on in the world. Like I know you keep up on what's really going on in the world. And then it sounds like you ask yourself a question. And the question I think you said is, if I were in their shoes, what would I want somebody to do or say? Is that right? What would I want somebody to do or say for me?
Yes. Or how would I want them to understand like the life that I'm living right now?
Okay.
And so my background's in history and I love learning about people and places and how they lived. And I think that's where this comes from. And I do it in the present day as well as for the past.
Okay. So how would I want them to, what would I want them to know about the life that I'm living right now?
Yes.
Okay. So I love this. I think this is awesome. So then here's my next question. So you ask yourself this question, and then what specifically would I have to then do to behave like you? After you ask yourself this question?
I literally visualize in my mind that the setting, almost like the movie scene, of where that like prototypical person who's being affected by this, whether it could have been an image or a video I've seen on the news or on Twitter, that sparks that visualization, or it could be just something I imagine in my mind, like I create the scene in my mind. So then so I'll start thinking this and I'll imagine what this looks like for that person in my mind. And then I start to think, well, what would be helpful to them? And not that I'm the savior, not that I'm going to go out and save the world, but it's almost like the knowledge and understanding I have will at least help me to understand the policies that, Congress wants to enact or the president wants to enact, or understand what are the initiatives that I can support that are out there. Okay.
And then when you do bring it into your business, like you've come up with an answer, you visualize this, and you've thought about how does this what are the things that I want to support? What are your goals when you bring it into your business?
Okay. So the goals would be to role model. I feel like I'm a role model for others out there. So and we all role model, because as human beings, we're mimickers, we're animals after all. We learn how to think and how to act by watching other people, those around us, especially those around us who we may admire or want to be like. And so I feel like I'm role modeling the behavior and the actions to other people, podcast listeners, clients, et cetera, by doing that. So I would say that's goal number one, to hopefully inspire others to do likewise. And then the second goal is really to attract those women to Speaking Your Brand who feel like they can get the most out of working with us. Not necessarily because they have the same exact political beliefs or the same exact values or want to articulate the same values, but because they're open-minded and because they have that sense of empathy for others as well. And so I think that is really what makes a great salesperson and what makes a great speaker and thought leader.
And I love that too, because to me, that goes back to, and I talk about this all the time, is that like my goal really is to, and I want to say this backwards because this is like just getting really honest and candid about it. Like really my goal becomes, I want to repel people as fast as possible that aren't a good fit so that there's plenty of room in my energy level, in my business to attract the people who are the right fit. So does that come into play for you at all when you think about, because I'm talking here about, bringing your worldview into your business without polarizing your audience. Do you think about repelling people too at all?
I don't consciously or intentionally set out to create my content or create my podcast episodes to do that, but I know that will end up happening. And so you mentioned last year when George Floyd was murdered and the protests really took off after that weekend in May. And so I and my lead speaking coach, Diane Diaz, we did an episode on the podcast the week after called The Work of Anti-Racism as White Women. Obviously, we're white women. I knew a vast majority of my podcast listeners and clients were also white women. So I felt like I, as a white woman, could talk to them and at least share like what it was that we were feeling and what we felt that we could do and what we understood about what was going on. And so did I repel people? Yes. Send out a new email newsletter related to that episode. Got a few, but very few people who wrote back and basically like, I don't want to hear about politics. I didn't sign up for this newsletter about politics. Okay. That's okay. Like that's, you're welcome to unsubscribe. No problem there. But it was actually, I think I got maybe two people who wrote back to that email newsletter. And so I actually did not get as much of a negative reaction as I thought, but I will say this, probably because most people who had come to the newsletter and come to the podcast knew about me and my background. So it wasn't like a 180. I think this is what happens, Nikki, with a lot of women who are out there and they're not sure what to do, is they've been silent for so long. They've never dipped a toe anywhere. And then all of a sudden they come out with something and it is a surprise to their audience. And so their audience isn't quite sure how to react. So I feel like if it's just part of who you are and you just talk about things regularly, it won't be as big of a leap for you or for your audience.
That's good. Because I do know that there is somebody who I also am, I would say friends, like colleagues, friends. And she did post some things, I remember on Instagram, and just got slammed. And her stuff really it was more around the political, during the election. And it wasn't even talking about Democrat or Republican. It was really talking about coming together and celebrating, a woman vice president. And oh my gosh, the backlash. It was my heart was breaking for her reading the things that people were posting on her social media platform. And I remember then being okay, my heart is breaking for her. And I'm so glad that I'm not the person who's getting this, people bombarding her with these really mean, thoughtless comments. So, yeah. So that's a good point of that. You do it regularly so that your audience isn't surprised. So I want to say that to me sounds like another structure and step in the process. So if this is an important topic for you. If you really do want to be somebody who brings your worldview into your business, that is something that you have to make at least some kind of a conscious effort to do regularly so that it doesn't feel so out of the blue to your audience. I think that's a really great one. Okay.
Yes. And Nikki, can I add something here that may be helpful for you and for your listeners? So we've been talking a lot about politics because that is my background and that is what I tend to talk about when it comes to my worldview. But your worldview could be based on spirituality. Your worldview could be based on the way that you see something going on in your industry that just doesn't sit right with you. So it does not have to be political. Yes, it can be. And sometimes there are political things that come up where you feel like you do want to make some type of statement about, and that's fine. But I think like thinking about the worldview from a broader perspective. And if you're running your business and maybe your business has nothing to do with spirituality, but it's really important to you and it's important to your values, you could start talking about it in a way, again, that brings their audience in with you on that journey. I know, Nikki, you're such a big proponent of like inviting, like this idea of invitations, like you're inviting your audience to learn more or inviting your audience on this journey of discovery with you. That can also make it just so much more of a palatable process for you and for them.
Thank you for saying that. That was really helpful. I feel like I just had a light bulb moment with that too, that it isn't just politics. Like it is just your worldview is what are your belief systems, right? And what are you passionate about? What are the things that you do speak out about and feel, drawn to or called to do. So I love that. Okay. So then here's my next question. So how do you know you're achieving your goal of bringing your worldview into your business without polarizing your audience? What's your evidence? How do you know you've achieved it?
Okay, so I will say that you could polarize your audience, but they probably won't be your audience for very long. So that's fine. Like they will drop, and maybe they will come back at some point when they're ready to listen to more, which is totally fine. And so here's the how I see that. Achieving seems like a weird word in this case, but here's how I see that. Like I'm making an impact, or reaching people. Is that when I have listeners and clients tell me, Carol, speaking your brand is so much more than a business; it's a movement. And when they say that, I'm like, oh, we're on the right track. And when I have clients and listeners say, thank you so much for the vulnerability that you shared in those podcast episodes. Like I feel braver to do what I feel like I want to do and speak out about because you've done that as well. So, and then there's like the tangible things. So you mentioned in my bio that I was named as one of Orlando's Women of the Year this year. And that came from a woman who spoke at our event last October that we ran, our Brave Bull Beyond Live Virtual Summit. Then she became a client in our Thought Leader Academy. And then she nominated me for that award. I don't believe that would have happened if I hadn't infused speaking your brand with our values and our mission. And so and we sold out our Thought Leader Academy last fall and again this spring. And I really do believe it's because we're much more than just helping you, become a better speaker and create your signature talk. Of course, we do those things, but it's the way we do them and why we do them is why women come to us.
Okay, so I'm going to say that I see that as another part of the structure, what you just said. The piece that I can pull out from, that was great. Thank you. And the piece that I pull out from that is you do get external feedback from your audience that they are really engaged with this part of what you're doing. So whatever your worldview is, when your audience is coming back and giving you external feedback around like, this really resonates, that is another clue that what you're doing is working. It's allowing you to bring your worldview into your business. So, again, how Carol does it is it doesn't mean that that's the way you have to do it. But that's a structure piece of it. Are you getting external feedback? So love that. Okay. Next question. What do you actually do to reach the goal of bringing your worldview into your business?
Most of this happens through the podcast, just because that is the weekly content that I create. So I have my podcast spreadsheet of all the episodes that I've done and all the episodes that I plan to come out with. And I do try to balance the more like tactical episodes of, I did an episode recently on, mistakes that speakers make that turn off their audiences, or 3 different speaking styles that you can do. So, very educational, very practical, very tangible things that people can learn. But I balance those with episodes that are more thought-provoking or require a little bit more deep thinking, and episodes where I share something a little bit more personal or vulnerable, which is not my go-to. Remember, I live 99% of my life in my head, not because I don't have any, it's not that I'm a private person in the sense I don't want to share. I just don't think about sharing a lot of things. And so I have to really make a very conscious effort to balance my podcast episodes to make sure that I do that.
Okay, so then the next piece of the structure there is, what kind of content are you putting out into the world, and bringing some balance to it, right? Bringing the piece that is very focused on your business, that is educational, that is informative, and however you want to do that, and then also bringing this piece in that allows for a little bit more vulnerability, allows for a little bit more of like a peek behind the curtain, maybe. So that's the structure piece I hear there. So I love that. Okay. So how do you know it's time to pay attention to bringing your worldview into your business?
Okay. This is a good question. So I have always done it. So I would say if for listeners, if you've been in business for a while, there is something that you get up on your soapbox about. Number one. So there could be something that again within your industry, within your area of expertise, your topic that you talk about, with something that you get up on your soapbox about that you're really passionate about, and that you see that there could be change around and you want to advocate for that. So that could be one way to bring in your worldview. Another way is what we mentioned earlier, could be something that's political, something that's spiritual, again, something that's really a part of who you are. Look back to when you were young. What were really important things to you? What did you just naturally gravitate towards doing? I remember when I was in high school, I would make speeches about the environment and global warming and about not testing cosmetics on rabbits. So I was definitely the little activist and advocate, and I have carried that through, as you can see, till today. So there probably are some things that you are also really meaningful to you. So think about how you can just start sharing some of those little anecdotes and stories in the content that you create.
I love it. I love that. Okay. So here's my next question is, how do you know when the task of bringing your worldview into your business is accomplished?
Well, I'm not sure it ever is accomplished. There's definitely no mission accomplished banner that we can hang on our rooms or on our walls somewhere, because everything's always changing and evolving. Our businesses, our clients, what goes on around us, and really ourselves. We're constantly changing and evolving to what's going on. So my political beliefs may have stayed pretty much the same over the past 20, 30 years, but who I am, how I show up in the world constantly changes. So I think that's actually to our benefit, and it's to our audience's benefit, again, as entrepreneurs, as speakers, our thought leaders, to take our audiences with us on our journey as we learn more about ourselves, because this is what I believe as thought leaders, we are mirrors, we are reflections for our audience. They see themselves in us and the journey that we're taking.
Yes. I want to say amen to that. Yes, I totally agree. Thank you. Okay. So as we start to wrap up like the part of the NLP questions, I want to, if you're open to this, I always like to do I call it a lagniappe section. So lagniappe is a French term, I believe, which means a little something extra. So Carol, are you open to me asking you some like insight questions?
Sure. A little je ne sais quoi.
Yes. Okay, so this is kind of a big question. What would you say is the biggest mistake you've ever made in your business, and what did you learn from it?
Oh, okay. So I have to pick one. This is, I mean, that's right. There's little things. There's bigger things. So here is something that I'm actually going to be talking about on the Speaking Your Brand episode in August. I haven't done the episode yet, but it will be a solo episode. And I mentioned it in one of the episodes I did in July about thought leadership. So as I mentioned earlier, we held our Brave Bold Beyond live virtual summits, which were live full day events in October of last year and April of this year. And we had 10 women speakers who delivered 10-minute TED style talks. So they were kind of, throughout the day, and we had some panel discussions. And then I did an opening speech on either those two events. But what I realized is that I really enjoy handing the spotlight to other people. I actually don't like the spotlight on myself. Even though I'm a speaker and I love public speaking, I'll go and do my thing for an hour or however long, and that's fine. But I really like shining the spotlight on others, which is great. Like I love doing that. But the downside from a business perspective is that I am the voice and the face of the brand, and I don't always want to be in that role. Like I resist being in that role a lot, which seems very counterintuitive and very ironic. And I'm really starting to recognize this in the past couple of months and realizing that as much as I want to hide behind the name Speaking Your Brand and our mission, I need to put myself out there more as Carol. And honestly, I don't know if it's not necessarily a mistake, but a lesson I've learned and something that I know that I need to work on going forward.
I think that's a big one. And I feel like I can relate to that too. Yeah. I had a coach a few years back who used to always say, Nikki, you're always in your head and you need to get into your heart. And I would always be like, I don't know what that means. Like, I don't know how to do that. So I feel like I feel like I can relate somewhat to what you're saying too. Yeah.
Yes. Same. I've heard the same thing. And maybe we need a support group.
I need a support. Yes, I think we do. We need a support group that's like, how do you really show up from the place of the heart and not always just in the head? Because to me, like what I'm teaching is that it's the content, right? Like the content is what matters, not me. Like it's never going to be the Nikki show. Like I'm not comfortable with that.
Well, we can tiptoe a little past the line together.
All right. Oh, I'll say you're my, I'm going to watch you and push myself then. So thank you. Okay. So here's another question for you. How do you celebrate your wins?
So bad at it. I'm sure all of these things are interconnected, really. Like I said, like we sold out the Thought Leader Academy both times. And I was just like, okay, great. Next, I don't, I have some very dear friends and they are so much better at celebrating and they like force me to celebrate things even when I don't want to. So I think that's what it's like, finding that support network who will do those things even when it's not natural for you to do so.
Yeah, I agree. All right. So here's another question. What's one thing people would be surprised to learn about you?
Okay. So like I pretty much am an open book as long as people ask me and I'm, what was something that people don't know about me? I would say like, I really like fitness, but I don't think that people would be that surprised about that. So I like to travel. Like I really love, like, again, because of my love of history, like I love to travel. Yet I really prefer traveling through reading books than actually going places, or at least that's what my lifestyle tends to indicate, because I don't actually travel a whole lot, even though in my mind, I wish I did.
Okay. I think that's a great answer. Thank you. What's something exciting going on in your business right now?
Okay, so this goes back to the answer that I gave about mistakes or lessons learned about me showing up more as Carol. So I'm starting to put out more video content, including like I'm now recording videos for the podcast and releasing those on our YouTube channel. So it's actual video of me or video of me and the guest, not just the audio. And then we're also doing a LinkedIn Live video show in addition to the podcast. So really just trying to do more video content and put myself out there more as Carol, obviously along with supporting Speaking Your Brand.
Ooh, that is exciting. I was wondering about that because I saw something and I was like, this looks like a video of Carol. And I was surprised. So I've seen it. So I'm excited for you. All right. Last question for you. How can people listening right now connect with you?
So the best thing is in your podcast app, just go and search for Speaking Your Brand and start listening to episodes that pique your interest there. And then if you go to speakingyourbrand.com/Nikki, so Nikki, Nikki's first name is speakingyourbrand.com/Nikki. We do have a free workbook on how to position yourself as a thought leader. And this really will help you with this idea of putting your worldview out into the world. There's question prompts in there. There are steps that you can take, things that you can consider. So if you go to speakingyourbrand.com/Nikki, you can get that. And then on that page, there'll be ways for you to connect with me on social media as well.
So please do go and connect with Carol and definitely give her podcast a listen if you haven't yet. It is a phenomenal podcast. She gets great guests. You can probably tell she asks really smart, good questions and has really smart, good discussions on there. So it's a fantastic podcast. It's one of my favorites. So please go and listen. Carol, thanks for being here so much. I'm so grateful to you for sharing your insights and for letting us kind of peek behind the curtain and ask these questions about how to master excellence when it comes to bringing your worldview into your business.
Well, thank you so much, Nikki. I'm going to have to go back and listen to this because you did such an excellent job of picking out the structure of all the spaghetti mess that I was talking about. So thank you.
Well, the whole point of this isn't that you necessarily even know your structure. Like that's what's so beautiful about this NLP process. A lot of times people who really excel at something don't know that they have a structure. But if you ask people, you start to see like, ooh, here are some pieces that I can go apply into my own life and my business, which is the objective of this series. Okay, so for you, the listener, if we haven't connected yet, one of the best places for you to start igniting your sales is to come join the Sales Maven Society. This is where you bring your questions and concerns. I'll provide answers and guidance to boost your confidence in all your sales situations. You can join the Sales Maven Society right now by going to salesmavensociety.com. This is a monthly membership. It's $147 a month. There are live coaching calls. There's tons and tons of pre-recorded training that you can go through at your own pace. There is a phenomenal Facebook group that is very interactive where you can post questions and tag me. You can also post questions to the other members and they'll give you answers. It's really quite special. And you can come for your first month right now on a trial code, which will save you $100 off your first month. So you can come for $47 for your first month by entering this coupon code 47trial. So it's the number 4, the number 7, TRIAL when you go to salesmavensociety.com. We'd love to see you there. And if we haven't connected yet on social media, please let's do that. I tend to hang out on Instagram and LinkedIn, and make sure you connect with Cheryl. Make sure you connect with Carol too, because she is fun to follow on social media. So we'll put all of that in the show notes for you. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you for being here.
Thanks for listening to Sales Maven. Visit us online at yoursalesmaven.com/maven for more resources to boost your confidence and skills.